I have been attending a lot of events recently. And the thing that's so interesting was the wide variety of the types of events that I have been going to. There was also a stint where I had 7 different events in 9 days. Exhausting, yes. Fulfilling, also, yes. Now, the wide variety that I'm talking about with all of these events is CIO summits, AI conferences, safety events, gym bro dinners, entrepreneur dinners, camp enterprise, been able to go sit down with a whole bunch of high school kids for half a day and talk about leadership and business, and then more sales, business dinners and lunches than I can even count. But the thing that's so interesting about all of these different types of events that I'm going to is how comfortable I feel in every single room. And I started thinking about this. Sean, how did you go from being this extreme introvert into someone who speaks on stages for a living and can just walk into any room and feel comfortable having conversations? I want to spend some time today digging into this process and what helped me figure this out. Now, I will say this didn't happen overnight, but as I look back, I have absolute clarity on the path that I took to get here. And so my hope is that as I share some of these things, it can come across as street signs or a guide for things for you to focus on that can help you get there faster. The first thing that I have to dive into is behavioral assessments and understanding yourself. The very first one that I took years ago, it was a DISC behavioral assessment. Now, since then, I've taken Berkman and Enneagram and on, kind of all, there's a lot of different styles. But I keep finding myself coming back to DISC because it is so foundational and basic and easy to understand and comprehend. Without going into too much details, just think extrovert, introvert, highly analytical, highly focused on support. Why is this important? Because once you understand where you fall, all of these things that you start doing and how you interact with other people start to make sense. It's a beautiful way for you to better understand yourself. When you read the assessment and the report, you think, oh, wow, that is me. Yeah, that's exactly how I handle situations like that. So if you've been fortunate enough to have friends or colleagues that have shared feedback with you, once you start understanding yourself and your assessments, then it becomes a pretty massive unlock because everything starts with us. Once you understand yourself, then you can start to figure out how do you best communicate with others. Now, before I dive into the communicating with others optimization, I want to get into some foundational communication skills. There were some things that I really grappled with, namely eye contact. I would also use a lot of filler words, the ums, the uhs, and every time you use filler words like that, it destroys your credibility. People immediately start thinking, is Sean very confident in what he's saying? Is he right? Or is he just kind of fumbling his way through and trying to sound like he knows what he's talking about? So making and maintaining eye contact, elimination of filler words, being able to use voice modulation, going high, going low, being able to create that vocal variety, it keeps people locked in and engaged. And then finally, hand gestures. You saw me just doing this right now. For those of you that are listening to audio, go to YouTube because you can see me. But when you use hand gestures to draw people in, all of a sudden they pay more attention. And so these communication tips that I'm sharing with you right now are really focused on how do you hold their attention. Because again, if you do not come across as confident, people are not likely going to pay much attention to you. This is where you start to tie things together. And the third thing that I want to talk about is adapting to the room, which is why these behavioral assessments are so important. Whenever I come off stage, if somebody very timidly walks up to me and is like, hey, Sean, I really appreciated your speech, I'm not going to respond with, oh man, that's fantastic. Great. What was your favorite part? No. Immediately, that person is going to be put on their heels and they're not going to know how to respond to me. So when somebody comes up and they are a little bit shy, a little bit timid, you match them where they are. Hey, man, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Was there something specific that stood out to you? Perfect. Now you have welcomed them in, you have met them where they're at, and then you start pulling them into the conversation. You've helped them realize that this is a safe place, that they can be real and open up and have a good conversation. You have to ultimately help them feel comfortable. And the more comfortable they feel, the more likely they are to share more feedback and open up. And when people share feedback and open up, that's when you start building trust. That's when you start building real relationships with people. Flashback to just a few days ago, I was a closing keynote for a CSO event here in Houston and met so many incredible people. And throughout the day, I had some pretty good conversations with people that I had known and met and had seen at other events and things like that. And then with me being the closing keynote, I gave my personal branding speech. Afterwards, there were more subsequent conversations than I could count. And the thing that got me so excited was all of the people coming up to me and expressing how much my story resonated with them. They opened up. They shared, yeah, that's exactly what it was like for me whenever I was 10 years old and got my first computer. And so we built a real meaningful connection through that common life experience. I have such a deep appreciation for people that are willing to open up and have those meaningful conversations. Well, okay, I digress. Let me get back on point here. At the end of the day, you have to understand yourself. You have to know where you fall, what is your default mode of operation. And you also have to learn how to read other people. You have to do this very quickly. You have to size them up, understand where they fall. Do they stand up, walk up confidently, shake your hand with a firm grip, or are they a little bit more timid? You read all of this on the fly, and then you adjust your response, your demeanor to match them. That is one of the biggest takeaways. I think they call the term mirroring, which is mirroring their mannerisms and vocabulary terminology, things that they use, because it allows you to connect. Now, bonus points, having knowledge across a lot of different domains. At the beginning of the episode, I was talking about how I went to AI conferences and cybersecurity and Gym Bro and entrepreneur dinners. These are wildly different domains, especially speaking to high school kids, which, funnily enough, I was more nervous speaking to all those high school kids than I was at speaking in front of 600 executives. And I think it was just because it was new for me. But when you have skills around a lot of different domains in life, it makes it so much easier for you to confidently walk in to any room. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be the expert in the room. You just have to have some sense of knowledge of the people that are in the room, the types of conversations that they're going to be having. If you do not, this is where I encourage people to, if you are entering a room cold, like if I went to some sort of an event like I don't even know, some event that sold purses or handbags. That would not be my thing. Obviously, I know nothing about it. I know Louis Vuitton, the brand, they make bags and stuff, but beyond that, I don't really know. And so if I were to walk into a room like that, I would just probably observe and listen. And if somebody was having a conversation about something that I did pick up on, I would politely come in and say, hey, just couldn't help myself. Overheard you guys talking about this. Would it be okay if I jumped in here? And people will look at you and make it very clear if they don't want you in the conversation or not. Oh, nope, sorry. Okay, cool. I'm going to go over here now. And then that's it. And we'll probably beat ourselves up, but at the end of the day, they're not going to think twice about who you are or were. They're just going to go right back to doing their thing because people primarily only care about what's going on in their life or the people that they know. I spent so much time overanalyzing awkward conversations that I would have. And wow, that was a lot of wasted energy. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to understand ourselves. We have to understand what it means to effectively communicate. And I know you think that you're effectively communicating, but if you ever have the opportunity to record yourself, it might be a little bit of an eye-opening experience. And then understanding others. I cannot stress enough how important community is. And in order to build community, we have to connect with one another. These skills, as I've continued to hone and refine them, have become the biggest unlock of my entire life. Not just because it's allowed me to step on stages, but because it has allowed me to build meaningful relationships with more people than I can possibly imagine. If you find yourself wanting to get in more rooms, go put yourself in more rooms.